Hi, I'm Conor Byrne, and this is That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Today, I catch up with the MD of Accenture Song, Richard Carr. If you're listening in Ireland, you probably know Richard and associate his name with Rothco, one of the country's leading ad agencies in the past few decades. But after being acquired by Accenture in 2017, the agency has followed the path of other markets and pulled together its new offering under the guise of Accenture Song. So today gave me a chance to understand more about that offering from Richard. This conversation then quickly leads us into some wonderful discussion about the perspective Richard has on the marketing landscape globally. We talk about the power of technology and marketing, and not just in an execution perspective, but actually the power within an organization when there's joined up thinking between these two parts of the organization. We talk about the role of agencies in helping clients remain relevant and how agencies themselves have to remain relevant to their clients. We discuss ways of working in a post-COVID era and also how we as an industry are doing with diversity of thinking. Just before we get into this great episode with Richard Carr, just a reminder to subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening or watching. And that will mean you get a notification of when our next episode drops. Or you can, of course, visit that'swhaticallmarketing.com where all our previous episodes are hosted. So for now, let's get into the episode with Richard Carr of Accenture Song. Richard, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. Great to have you as a guest. First of all, anyone who's watching this will see it's a little bit different. So we're here in your offices in Smithfield in Dublin. So thanks for having us in this fantastic venue. For anyone who's listening or watching that may not know Richard Carr, can you give me just a brief introduction of who you are and your path to your current role?
So a path to current role, I was one of the owners of a creative agency called Rothco. And I think to Irish listeners, they're probably familiar with Rothco's journey. We sold Rothco to Accenture back now in 2018. And through, a long path, these things take time because it was in sync with a lot of other global acquisitions. We are now at a stage where we are now Accenture Song, and Rothco has joined the Droga5 creative agency.
Can you explain to me then the interaction of Accenture Song, how Droga5 fits in? Because there's lots of different elements to the business. I think it's important to kind of people who may not know how it works understand how it all works.
Yeah, no, good question, important one. So look, safe to say we're a year old. So Accenture Song has really only been out there in the marketplace globally for about 12 months. And Accenture Song is a very novel idea. And the idea originally, David Droga's concept, came from, why don't we take the key part of what clients are looking for now, which is creativity, but join it with technology and join it in turn with consulting and consulting skills. So we're a blend of those three very distinct disciplines that traditionally wouldn't have come together. And the reason for that, I think everybody's aware the world has changed beyond recognition, particularly in the last 3 years. And clients' problems have become harder to crack. So we've had to bring very different skill sets together. And I love the stat that CEOs think their business in 10 years' time will probably not exist, which is pretty startling, but equally very understandable. You only have to look at the pace of technology to sort of get that. So we're set up to try and help our clients stay more relevant to their customers in turn. And then we have to clearly stay more relevant to our clients, and we see our business changing in front of our eyes every day.
Yeah, and it's that I think that relevance for clients and for yourselves is really, really important. And does the mix of creativity, technology, and consultancy, how are you staying on top of all of that?
Well, I think I don't think it would have been an exaggeration to say that it's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
We're now 6 years in, and the journey to get to where we are now is never straightforward, and doing something new and doing something different in any marketplace or in anywhere is always challenging. But it's also very, very rewarding because you get the opportunity to turn up in a very, very different way And I love the idea. I love the fact that we work with people who have very different educational backgrounds, very different skill sets. The fact that we have engineers and that we have people who did arts degrees and people who did design and came from creative background. And that for me is fascinating. And that puts us in a very unique place in the market, there in the marketplace as well.
And how have you found, I guess, the transition from being an independent agency effectively to being part of something that's much bigger and much more global?
So I think, again, any journey like this, lots of obstacles, lots of things to get used to. Yes, it's very, very different. And even from my experience personally, you're doing effectively your own thing. I was very lucky to have 3 amazing business partners in Paul Hughes, Patrick Hickey, and Patrick Ronaldson, who I worked with for a very long time. And we did our, with the wonderful team in Rothko, we effectively did our own thing, as you do with any business. Obviously, the great support clients that we have. Thankfully, many of those clients are still with us because they were, in a happy coincidence, clients also of Accenture. So you move from that to being part of one of the world's largest PLCs. It's a very, very different, it's a very different world, but also brilliant because it's a great learning experience and a great learning experience for anyone. You learn different ways of approaching things, you learn different skills, and that's very helpful in responding to our clients because so much change has taken place before us.
What are those interactions then that you're having with marketers in this market, in other markets, like the UK? Because you're right, I think that the complexity of what marketers have to face is different, phenomenal, challenging. CMOs are trying to keep on top of, sometimes keeping their jobs, and keeping going and showing impact. So what are the conversations you're having with marketing leaders?
Yeah, I think the conversations are very, very similar. I think marketing is at something of a crossroads or 2 roads, and it probably will either go 2 ways, but let me keep going with the analogy. So there's one road which is very much tech-led, AI-driven, mass content, platform-based. And then there's another road which is highly innovative, highly cutting edge, highly leading the pack and leading the C-suite. I actually think marketing needs to go on both roads at the same time and simultaneously. It's not about picking a side, but marketeers need to own both those worlds in the same way that we've had to do that as our business. Marketing, I think sometimes, I hate labels, but marketing does become a little labeled in certain organizations where it's sort of stuck a little bit in the corner as a corporate function or as a cost center.
Mm-hmm.
And I think increasingly when marketing can attach itself to growth and to the customer and the end user, I think that's very, very powerful, because owning the customer in an organization, owning the customer at the boardroom is the space where marketing is probably most comfortable, but it's also the most powerful because every organization needs customers, and that's where the source of growth, be it old or new ones, are going to be. So that for me is that crossroads, that intersection where marketeers need to be. But it's a difficult job. Being a CMO is hard. I think what we're seeing is the successful CMOs and chief customer officers are the ones who bring that intersection of creativity and technology together and are really joined with what the rest of the C-suite are looking for. And that's where the power is. I mean, the great alliance in any organization, and we see it increasingly, is between the CTO and the CMO. That's where the great traction happens, because getting the CTO on board is a very, very powerful space. Very powerful.
More powerful than the CFO, because that's always been a big discussion, hasn't it? CMO, CFO.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this is an opinion of one. I think the power when CTOs and CMOs join is that they're able to then build the case for why you invest in marketing and why you ultimately invest in the customer. CMO marketing spends are generally considerably lower compared to what organizations will spend on technology.
Right.
Considerably lower. So, from a CFO's point of view, if there's a return on what I'm doing, a return on a good return on investment, they're going to back it. I think where that C-suite can elevate it to how do we stay relevant as an organization? Because relevance is everything. You only have to see the changes over the last number of years.
It's kind of frightening. Maybe touching on that, it's just changing at such a pace, and keeping up with it, I think, is a huge thing, and probably for clients, it's a big thing for them to try to figure out. Are you finding more and more clients coming to your team saying, "Help us figure this out," because we don't want to get distracted necessarily? And I feel that's a huge role agencies can play, is actually helping clients, where they may not have time to figure some of this stuff out.
Yeah, I think undoubtedly. I mean, it is on clients' minds a lot, and a lot of conversations. I think we just always have to be a little wary. I mean, generative AI, 18 months ago, everybody spoke about the metaverse extensively.
Yes.
Now it's generative AI. 18 months time, it'll be something else, and all these things will merge together in time. But I think we have to be careful that what we're trying to do at all times is help our clients stay relevant to their customers. So we, as Accenture Song, need to be in the business of bringing new things to clients if they help them stay relevant to those customers.
I agree, because I'd read somewhere, some people are kind of being critical of kind of marketers saying another shiny new ball, and every marketer is going out like cats after a piece of string. And I'm not sure I fully agree, because I think, if we're not curious to find out, then I think we're possibly in the wrong business, to be honest with you. That curiosity has to be there. I think the skill is the balance.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think quite close to the DNA of the classic marketing brain, it has to be curiosity.
Yeah.
Hugely important. And it's at the core of creativity as well. It would be great to see marketing reinvent itself as that curious, highly relevant, very tech-enabled profession that sat in the middle and of the C-suite and had those solutions that were much more holistic, rather than just being about, we're going to use advertising to crack this problem. And that's the power. If you go to the essence of what marketing is about, it's growth, it's about relevance, advertising, technology, transforming your call center are all very valid. And, arguably can be owned by the capable marketeer.
And also part of, again, if you think the customer experience, right? Like all those touch points. I'd often talk to people about brand, and, brand almost being a dirty word, because people are like, oh, they say brand, they just mean the TV ad, and it's, very one dimensional, where all those things you've touched upon are where customers interact with, call it your organization, call it your brand, call it your company. And so understanding how those interactions happen and how they make people feel or experience is hugely important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to the, maybe 20 years ago, you could put out an advertising campaign and it would make people feel something about your brand, and they go into the supermarket and purchase it. I think now we live in a world where, yes, you can put something out there that makes people feel something about your brand, but within 3 seconds, they're on their phone looking at it.
Yes.
And if that experience isn't brilliant, they're going to move elsewhere. So again, marketing owning that full holistic experience is very exciting, really exciting space to be, but more complex, without doubt.
Definitely. And what then are you seeing in terms of gaps that marketers need to fill in terms of competency or capability?
So good question. So if you're doing a marketing degree now and you're in college, about 50% of the coursework is on technology, is on platforms, is on innovation. And that is a complete change from somebody who maybe studied marketing 20 years ago. So I think for marketeers, the sort of upskilling, the understanding of where, the digital core of a business sits, the understanding of cloud, how things are built and created on platforms is absolutely critical. It doesn't mean that they're a deep expert, but understanding how it's all connected is really important. And again, very exciting. Exciting. It's new skills. It's putting the bits together, and marketeers being naturally curious people, that's a great space to be, because it helps then join the language of the C-suite together, because you know what the CTO and the CFO and the CIO are thinking. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Marketeers naturally are good communicators. So bringing all that together is powerful, but it does require upskill.
I spoke to a former colleague of mine who worked in the client success side of the business, and we were talking about technology. And, I said, how do you engage with new technology? And her answer was brilliant. She goes, I go to the newest people on the team and ask them what they're seeing, because they're closer, they get it. And so she was giving that permission to everyone on her team to come with those ideas. How do you create that culture in this organization? Because, it's over 200 people in Accenture Song, right?
Yeah. So the short answer is, with some difficulty. Yeah, these things don't happen easily. But one of the techniques we use, and we nicked this, I don't mind admitting it from somewhere else, but is to start a meeting on a client brief or a client challenge and say, who's missing? We've got 2 or 3 people in the room. Who's missing? What skill set do we think we're missing here in this room if we're to take this problem? Because, the problems are more challenging. There's the days of, I think the days of when we used to work, you'd have an art director and a copywriter work going on for 2 weeks. I mean, those days are long gone in the dim and distant past. But it means then you bring a team together that are very much cross-discipline, and you get a better answer for the client. And I think the clients appreciate it as well, because I think for our clients who are they're under the same pressures. They're huge pressures to try and be innovative and speak the language of their C-suite and get it right. So that's hugely appreciated.
This is That's What I Call Marketing with your host, Conor Byrne. If you would like to get in touch with us, visit that'swhatIcallmarketing.com and see how we can help you and your business grow through marketing.
You mentioned the client's pressure there. How do you get close to that and understand the client's business and just the even navigation that they have to go through?
So again, another thing that we do more and more frequently is try and bring more of a representative body of the C-suite. It doesn't always have to be the C-suite. It could be minus 2 levels, but people who work across the disciplines of a client organization. So it could be the head of customer service, or somebody who works in information technology, or somebody who works on form side, somebody who works in the marketing department. And increasingly, when we engage broader in a client, in a workshop or whatever, we get better solutions, much better solutions, because we get a better sense of them.
Yeah.
But I think most interestingly, they get a better sense of themselves. And sometimes coming into a space like this in Smithfield, where it's 40,000 square feet of lots of nooks and crannies, people can get out of their day job a little bit.
Yes.
Come in, have some nice coffee, be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more open to even meeting their own colleagues. And we've had a lot of very successful sessions in here.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting that getting the people out and actually then that opportunity to get to know each other. In a very different way. I was reading stuff earlier this morning from MI3 in Australia, who were talking about the model, the agency model, and how that needs to evolve. And we're still probably in a somewhat hourly rate type model. How do you see that moving? And are you more kind of project and revenue share type model, or how's it working?
We work. I mean, we are a very different setup now than what we were in the past. In the past, one of the things that we got really right in our Roscoe journey was pricing with clients. It was one of those things that we put a lot of focus in. And I'm a big fan of more outcomes-based models, of which we work with some clients. Doesn't always suit, doesn't always work. But that's much more powerful.
I know you've definitely shared a view, kind of the need for humans to have kind of proximity and those interactions being really, really important. How is that working now in the post-COVID era for you here?
Well, so the way we work is we ask everybody to spend time with clients and colleagues. So you could be on a shoot, or you could be on a client site, or you could be in Smithfield, or you could be in in the dock or wherever else. And that's how we work for the time being. And I think is very important. It's also important for our mental health and our well-being. And look, at the end of the day, if you want people to collaborate, it's very hard to collaborate on a screen. I also think you get to know the whole self. You get to know the people. I think one of the limiting things about purely screen time is you don't see the full person.
I spoke with Jan Gooding for this podcast, phenomenal marketer, and she made a great point, which I loved, which is flexibility isn't flexible if it's only flexible for you.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. So there has to be flexibility on both sides. The other maybe counter argument is that perhaps we lose the opportunity of finding great talent if that great talent can only be in like a 25, 30 kilometer radius of the central location. What are your views on that?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I think again, it's a balance. Again, one of the wonderful things about technology and about Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all that is that you can reach a huge amount of people, deliver a very clear message and get them on site. So I don't see that ever going away.
Yeah.
In fact, it's only going to be more enhanced as we move into a spatial computing world, which is obviously the next phase that we'll go through in the next 4 to 5 years. And I think we'll move away from our phones and our screens and more to a headset world, which is, going to be
terrifies me. Yeah.
Fascinating and interesting and exciting and all that as well.
Makes me dizzy.
But so we can do that, but it then needs to be balanced, as you said, by the physical. So we're always going to need both. I mean, we have made, even from Droga team, from the agency point of view, they've made content in all sorts of parts of the world without ever having to go there.
Yeah.
The days of everybody hopping on a plane at great expense to go and travel to the four corners of the world, I think will be there where it's suitable, but certainly it won't happen en masse. That's a wonderful lesson.
Yes.
So it is the balance. It's putting all the ingredients into the soup and working out what's the best result.
Yeah, I participated in a shoot we did in India from my back garden. And so there was this incredibly talented, brand managers and marketers there and creative people there. Yeah. But for me to go was an extra person, and that extra cost, actually, if we have the screens and those people in the States able to dial in and out, I think that balance is really important.
Yeah. Hard thing to get right. Not everybody gets it right, but that's the world we're in.
I think trust is a huge part of that. Trusting the people that are there to know what they're doing. And, I saw that and that ability just to say, yeah, I'm kind of just here to view and share an opinion, but not get in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that trust usually is built when people know each other.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Agreed. Maybe touching on kind of that idea of, making sure we get like diversity across the spectrum, spreading out and making sure we can have enough people of diverse opinions, backgrounds. How do you think we're doing? I don't specifically ask about Accenture Song necessarily, but as an industry overall, do you think we have enough diversity here? And I mean maybe as much about backgrounds and reflecting the audiences that we're trying to.
Yeah. So short answer, no.
Right.
I think as and if we're focusing and talk about the marketing industry, but if you can, elevate that even further into the world that we're in with technology and consulting as well, I think we made a lot of strides, but I don't think we reflect the population. No, I don't. Absolutely. And I think we are trying a number of initiatives. I'll give you an example. We're in Smithfield here. It's North Inner City Dublin. I think it's highly unlikely that, there's a lot of kids in school around here. I don't know. Many of them will end up working here as we're set up now. And we need to get better at reaching kids, particularly young people coming up in this industry. They're coming from very, very different backgrounds. It's not an easy thing to do, but hugely important because we won't reflect society adequately if we don't do that. And I mean, there is a tendency, people, one of the things that people tend to hire not always, but tend to hire people in their likeness.
Yes.
It's one of those
Yeah.
things we all have to
Yeah.
watch out for. So again, we are a very diverse group here by nature of the skill sets that we have from consulting, creative through technology, but it's still mainly people who come from middle class backgrounds, for example. And we need to make sure that it's not all about who got X number of points in the leaving cert and we're moving beyond that. So we need to get better and constantly be aware of it.
Yeah. But part of it, I think, is, that experience, like of coming in and seeing somewhere like this. Like I remember going way, way back. I wanted to be a chef once, right? But it went way, way back, and I saw a kitchen when I was 11. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so sometimes it's just that spark and, having that. And so that's brilliant that, you could bring a kid into this studio and go, that's all I want to do. And, knowing
absolutely.
that and seeing that is brilliant. If you take a step back as not necessarily in your role as, lead of Accenture Song, but, just as someone who's been in this business for a number of years. I know you started as an account. You started as an account director.
I was an account executive.
Account exec,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the change. What are the changes? Look, huge changes, but the positive change I think you think you've seen in the industry.
Yeah. So if we take, again, it depends it's almost what industry we talk about. But if I take it at the which I joined was the advertising industry in Dublin originally, and I worked in Singapore for a little bit and all that. But take that industry, it's changed totally beyond recognition. But so has fashion, so has music industry, so has so many different industries. And I think it's now is an incredibly exciting time for anybody to join. I think coming into advertising, marketing, even where we are, technology consulting, it's a hugely exciting time because there's more tools at everybody's disposal. Now that sometimes can create a little bit of a dilemma in itself. It's a lot of choice, but it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal because there's very little that you can't do. I think the other change, which I love, is, obviously I when I first started, we were way back in the 1990s, but I think looking in Ireland, I think there's an awful lot more ambition. And I think, we were, as Rothco, a very ambitious company, and we wanted to grow, but we wanted to win Grand Prix in Cannes, and we wanted to do, work that the world really noticed. And we achieved many of those things. But I think that ambition and that self-confidence exists far more than in the industry that I joined, that was still quite parochial, quite small, and was very much focused on what was happening in London or New York. I think there's a confidence people on this island and that we didn't have way back then. And that's marvelous. And that's really attractive. And, the world is, for a lot of people, their oyster. And that's powerful. That's really, really powerful.
And do you think we're attracting enough global? Obviously a huge amount of foreign direct investment. I don't necessarily mean that, but I think about, a market like Amsterdam where there's a huge amount of kind of global work that happens there. Are we attracting enough of that?
We certainly are attracting a lot more than we did in the past. And the industry, by international standards, and again, depends what industry we're talking about. If we go back into just the advertising industry, is still relatively small. But, there's a lot more international work. I remember one of my moments when I began in the industry was, you'll never do international work. I remember hearing it. I remember vividly hearing it. And it was one of the things we were very determined to do in Rothco, was just to break the boundaries. And our sort of crux moment was way, way back in 2008 when the economic crash had really set in. We were lucky enough to have just won Allied Irish Banks as a client, and then all hell broke loose in the economy. And we set ourselves the objective was we need to get out there and we need to work with big international clients and work then with Heineken and the rest is history. So this is interesting times, good times. We're going to see a lot more of that. So I think the industry, if it hasn't, it certainly has ambition, but I think a lot of the things that we've touched on in the last few minutes are very similar. I think the industry if it stays in we're just in advertising rather than in being relevant or helping our clients stay relevant, I think, that's not going to work out very well. But relevance and understanding customers and understanding where they're going that's a powerful place to be.
Yeah. And the growth piece, I think, for me, coming out of it, it's a huge thing. All those things will lead to growth. And then, you're driving the business forward with your partners, with the likes of Accenture Song, which is, where it needs to be. As we come to a close, Richard, as a leader, what are some of the challenges and you're facing as a leader of an organization?
I think the speed of change and the speed of trying to stay, alongside our clients and helping them to grow their business is always a challenge, but it's always been a challenge. I think the more time that we spend together, both ourselves and clients, are very, very important. But I think most of all, it's purpose. And I think when we keep our purpose very front and center, and that purpose being we're helping our clients stay relevant to their customers, that's very powerful for people. And I think when no matter what discipline they come from, if they turn up with that purpose and everybody's reminded that that's the reason they get out of bed in the morning, that's powerful. Yeah. So, it's always, particularly in an organization like ourselves, it's always very challenging. We have lots of people from different organizations. I mean, there's multiple positions in this building, not just Rothko, because we have some of the Fjord team that joined us and Boomerang, or a life science agency. So you're bringing very different cultures together. But I think if you can align people around that purpose, that's powerful. And you can constantly communicate it.
Yes.
I mean, they often, people always say that in any leadership role, the easy part are the metrics and the profitability and all those kind of things. The hard part is the culture.
Yeah.
And that's something that we don't always get right. We certainly don't. But I think in the main, we've a group of people from very, very different coming together, working very closely together, and doing a good job of it. And I'm very proud of that. And we've a lot more work to do. But, after 12 months to get to that stage, it's a great start. And we're really looking forward now to kicking off into next year.
Brilliant. Richard, thank you so much for speaking to me today. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And best of luck. I mean, it's only going one way.
Right. Well, listen, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Richard has a fascinating perspective on the world we're operating in. As a leader himself, you can see he thinks deeply about what being relevant means to him, Accenture Song, the result, what that means to their clients. The ambition is clear, and you can almost feel it in the building when you were there. It was really interesting to sense that dynamic. And I think it's important for us, and as a country in Ireland, but also just as an industry, wherever you are based, we have that vision to do great things, go further, really push ourselves. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening to That's What I Call Marketing. If you did enjoy it, please, of course, share, subscribe so you can get a notification of when our next episode lands. And you can find all previous episodes on that'swhatIcallmarketing.com. We're on Twitter at @that's_marketing, Instagram, That's What I Call Marketing, and you can watch our episodes back on YouTube. And you guessed it, That's What I Call Marketing. So from me, your host, Conor Byrne, until the next episode, thanks very much.